Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Occult Perspectives. What we do on this channel is I talk about different esoteric research subjects, ranging from Freemasonry, Kabbalah, the Tree of Life, the Tree of Death, archangels, demons, you name it. We talk about it on this channel. In today's video, I wanted to talk about the symbolism in Sleeping Beauty, the Disney movie Sleeping Beauty, specifically the cartoon movie from 1959. There are newer movies about Maleficent, and I'm actually going to watch those movies really soon. I've seen the first one, but there's a second one now, so I really want to go and check both those movies out, watch the second one for the first time. This music, if you like what you hear in the background, it's called Lilith's Redemption. Haunting dark fantasy music for fallen divinity is the video title. The YouTube channel is Eternal Voyage, so make sure you go and check them out. Subscribe to them if you haven't already. And yeah, let's get into a little bit of the symbolism of the Disney movie Sleeping Beauty. I wanted to do kind of a symbolic breakdown of this movie because I knew there were a bunch of things in the movie, and after I rewatched it, I was like, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff in here that I'm kind of able to dissect. So let's get into it. The original movie was 1959. That's like before there was even like VHS, so I'm guessing you had to go to like maybe a movie theater to even watch the movie. I'm not exactly sure how that worked. The name of the princess in the movie is Aurora. So there right away you have solar symbology going on, right? That sun energy or star energy, however you want to refer to it. They sang a whole song about it in the movie, and the name is a reference to the dawn, they said. So in a lot of ways, you could see some parallels between like the Golden Dawn, whole Golden Dawn idea, and this. Just that rising sun type energy. Typically, in most mystery school traditions, temples are kind of focused around to the east, and that's where the sun rises, right? So there's a lot of symbolic import there. There's a lot of interesting looking crosses as you go throughout the movie. Some of them really look like Templar crosses. And then there's some other interesting looking crosses too that almost remind you of like some of the Golden Dawn artwork type crosses, or the Rose Cross ritual type crosses I noticed on some of the shields and banners and stuff in the movie. Some of the main characters in the movie, these fairies, that's the thing, the Fae make a lot of appearance in these movies as well as the Maleficent movies. The Maleficent movies kind of go into the history of the Fae and all that. But in this movie, they actually have a title when they introduce them, and they kind of fly in to the room, coming down from the window. There's a beam of light, almost like angels, and we'll kind of get into that symbolism. But they refer to them as honored and exalted excellencies. They are the good fairies, the Fae. So they kind of have this royal, regal type title going on there. In a lot of mystery schools, you see different like titles and such have really fancy names such as that. So honored and exalted excellencies, the good Fae, the good fairies. And they come kind of floating down into the room, or basically where they hold the ceremony, which is like, I guess, the main chamber of the castle, where the thrones sit, They represent a few different things. Let me turn the music down just a little bit. They represent the three elements. Well, really all four elements if you include their wings for air, which my good friend Deb pointed out to me. Thank you, Deb. But otherwise, they're red. Their dresses are red, green, and blue for fire, earth, and water. These fairies also represent the three theologian virtues, which are faith, hope, and charity. You see this with like these are the quote unquote Christian virtues, whereas the pagan or cardinal virtues are called temperance, fortitude, prudence, and justice, right? So here you have faith, hope, and charity, or charity is otherwise love. That's the real version of charity. Because we kind of equate charity in the modern world with like donations and, donating to charity and all these sorts of things, but really it has deeper implications. Real charity is love, whether that's spending time with somebody, getting to know somebody, investing time in them, all of these sorts of things. So these fae kind of almost look like they're floating down the ladder, because there's Jacob's ladder symbolism here, in congruency with the three theologian virtues, faith, hope, and charity. Especially if you're in Masonry, you should know about that. The names of these three fae are Flora, which is the red one, which represents plant life. Fauna, the green one, represents animal life. And Meriwether, she represents climate. A lot of similarities to the three golden goddesses in Zelda, Din, Nehru, and Faror. Same colors. They kind of represent the same archetypes in a lot of ways. Din is the one that cultivates the physical land. Faror is the one that creates like plant life, I think, and most of the terrain. And then I think Nehru is the one that creates like divine law, if I remember correctly. All three of them wear triangular pointy hats, and we know that there's a lot of symbolism with triangles, being the shape of manifestation. An upright triangle usually represents fire. Lots of different, symbolic correlations you could put into that. It is kind of funny in the movie because the prince, it shows the prince is being introduced to the princess who he's going to marry, who he's supposed to marry when he becomes older. But he's like 4 years old, and the baby's literally like sitting in the cradle. Like, it's kind of creepy, actually. I guess back in, back in the olden times, things were a little different, with royalty and such. It's all set up to be a specific way. And remember, this movie's like 1959 too, so it's an older Disney movie. 3 gifts are bestowed to the princess. Beauty, the rose is mentioned here. Like the symbolism of the rose, kind of, they point to that. And we know the rose has numerous, symbolism with like the rose croix, or there's the rosy cross, Rosicrucians, all that. So she's given the gift of beauty, and she's kind of referred to symbolically as a rose, and that goes into her name, her alias name, or her undercover name, which we'll get into later. She's given the gift of song, which refers to music, obviously, and this is one of the liberal arts. There's 7 liberal arts and sciences, music being one of them, so the gift of song. And then comes along Maleficent. So Maleficent, I think in the original Sleeping Beauty, I think it was based on a book. I watched a video, and originally Maleficent's just like an old lady or an old crone. But obviously in Sleeping Beauty, she's a powerful sorceress. She has like basically a Lilith archetype. I couldn't think of there's no other like deity other than maybe potentially Hecate, but other than that, pretty much seems to be very Lilith in nature. This Maleficent character, she represents the chaos. She's the poison, the catalyst. She's the dark witch. Raven symbolism too, because she has the pet raven. The raven is named Dante, I believe. Or no, Diablo. I'm sorry, not Dante. Getting that mixed up. But ravens symbolize intelligence. There's also a connection with Raven symbology and a Rob Zarok, I do believe, one of the spheres on the Tree of Death. So there's the war type energy going on there too. The Fae connection that we already mentioned. So yeah, lots of just interesting things going on with this Maleficent character, and that's why I'm really looking forward to watching the 2 live action movies about this character. So she has on her magical staff, there's a green orb, and basically she comes in And if you can find a video on it, you should try to YouTube it. I don't want to show a video, on this just for like copyright purposes, things of that nature. So I would say look the video up yourself. I am going to show you a picture of the spell on here, though, because there's a swirl, and I can't remember which way she's swirling. It was hard for me. I was trying to figure out if she was swirling clockwise or counterclockwise, because correct me if I'm mistaken, but if you go counterclockwise with the energy that's pulling energy in, if it's counterclockwise, and if you're going clockwise, isn't the energy kind of being projected outwards? I could be mistaken there, but I wasn't able to really determine which direction the energy was moving. But let me show you the picture of what the spell looks like, because it's really interesting. There's kind of this swirl going on, and there's like these, see, there's a bat, got the bat symbolism going on there, and that's kind of known to be one of Lilith's symbols too, and kind of these demon type creatures coming out of the vortex, the swirl. So very, very interesting stuff. Associated, more with like quote unquote darker magic. And then the actual curse goes, before the sun sets on her 16th birthday, she will prick her finger on the spindle of a spinning wheel and die. So here's the idea of having the thread cut, or the astral cord. Also could have a connection with the Wheel of Fortune, Sisters of Fate, which I think we see in the Hercules movie. I may be getting the name wrong on that, but there's 3 sisters, and they kind of rule over fate, and one of them cuts the cord of destiny, or not the cord of destiny, like the life thread. A lot of Saturn type energy going on there. Makes me think a lot of like Zoph-Kael too, the archangel, the darker archangel, known to sometimes, have an hourglass or a sigh. Makes you think of death or Father Time too. All that type of Saturnian energy kind of going on here. So she will prick her finger on the spindle of a spinning wheel and die. So, but the spell kind of gets, they can't really remove the curse completely, but the Fae are able to, the good fairies, because remember, Maleficent, she's a Fae as well, but she's just a darker type Fae, and her story is, I'm not sure what her backstory is. I know that something happens to her. She gets kind of betrayed, so that's why I kind of want to watch the other movies. It's important to know why these darker characters, what it is that makes them the way they are, because there's usually some kind of initial trauma or something that happens there. But this whole idea of pricking the finger on the spindle of a spinning wheel, just like the idea of pricking your finger and blood and stuff too, that has a lot to do with, like darker type energies and stuff. So I thought that association was very interesting too. Maleficent, too powerful for them to undo the curse. Merryweather transforms the curse into sleep instead of death, and then she can be awakened by a kiss. Every spinning wheel ends up getting burnt by order of the king. The Fae even make an interesting mention here. They say even the walls have ears. So that's something to take into consideration. I've had a few friends say before that, anytime you're in the woods or anything where the spirits are around, there's a multitude of spirits. There's, in some way, there's always some kind of other aspect of self. We could see these being other manifestations of self or part of our experience. So there's always energies around, that are kind of, watching, so to speak. And we can be watchers as well, the whole idea of the archetype of the watchers. Which Fae is it that says this? It is Fauna. She's the green one. She says that Maleficent doesn't know about love, kindness, the joy of helping others. She's not very happy, is she? So says Fauna there. I wrote it. And that's because Maleficent's dark energy has become unbalanced, which a lot of villains in the movies end up portraying this. So what ends up happening is something bad originally happens to the villains, and they're not able to completely transmute this energy, so they end up like creating havoc or chaos somewhere, which ends up being a catalyst for other souls' evolutions. So it's not always like just a bad thing. So interesting things to think about. So these fae, they disguise themselves as peasant women who raise the princess in the woods, kind of discreetly, as discreetly as possible. And their rule for themselves is they are not to use magic. That way they don't get caught. So they can stay under the radar from Maleficent and her minions. As long as the storm was raging on the mountain, Maleficent's hideout, her plans, had not come to fruition because the people knew that she was still upset. So you have kind of that whole archetype of a storm goddess type thing going on here, because that's one of the older manifestations of Lilith, is to be known as kind of this darker, like can be a storm deity, or brings, chaotic type natural forces. And then you also have, even Yahweh was said to be like a storm deity too. So it's kind of interesting to look at all of these different, not saying they're similar, but kind of the intensity of energies they bring in some aspects could be maybe similar. I'm not well versed enough on, the subject of both to know for sure. But kind of just that, we could say more intense energy, a stormy type energy, if you will. There's a black dragon pictured in the books. You have the black dragon symbolism there too. The minions are a disgrace to evil because they've literally just been looking for a little baby all 16 years. I thought that was kind of a funny part. Maleficent says, "Circle far and wide." She's a maid of 16, hair of sunshine gold, and lips as red as the rose. So rose symbolism there again. And circling far and wide, that's could be said to be circumscribing. She's telling them to check everywhere, make sure, go check it out. They're in the wood. The Fae are hiding in the woodcutter's cottage, living as mortals. The girl's name is Briar Rose. And I'm going to go ahead and Google the esoteric meaning of Briar Rose and let you know what it says. But basically, Aurora, or Sleeping Beauty, the princess, whatever you want to call her, they call her Briar Rose. Before she knows that she's the princess, as they're hiding away in the woods, that's kind of what they make her secret identity. The esoteric meaning of Briar Rose, often associated with the fairy tale Sleeping Beauty, is complex and multifaceted. It represents themes of dormancy, protection, resilience, and the passage of time. The briar rose with its thorns symbolizes a barrier to the outside world, but also a protective shield against the harsh realities of life. It embodies the beauty and passion of love, but also the potential for pain and suffering. The tale of Sleeping Beauty, with Briar Rose as a central element, can be interpreted as an allegory for the human experience, including loss, identity, and the enduring power of stories. Then it goes on to do a little bit more detailed of a breakdown. Protection and isolation. The thorn-covered hedge surrounding the castle and Sleeping Beauty acts as a protective barrier, isolating the sleeping princess from the outside world. Interpreted as a symbol of retreat or a period of necessary dormancy, allowing for personal growth and renewal. We see this with the idea of the sleep and the death and then the resurrection. Resilience and hope. The briar rose also represents resilience and hope. The princess's slumber is eventually broken by the kiss of a prince, symbolizing the transformative power of love and the possibility of awakening from a period of hardship and despair. It's amazing what, true love's kiss, can do. A kiss that actually has, the passion of love behind it, like true love, true drive, and true attachment. Not true attachment, but it's not really the word I want to use. It's not really the appropriate term, but just that pure fire, true awakening. We could really equate this to the idea of the Kundalini, The passage of time. The 100-year sleep in the story highlights the passage of time and the inevitable changes that occur throughout life. The briar rose's dormancy can be seen as a metaphor for the cyclical nature of life, with periods of rest and growth preceding new beginnings. So just the feminine energy in general there, with cycles, the divine feminine. Cultural significance. The briar rose is deeply embedded in cultural narratives, often representing beauty, resilience, and the transformative power of love. and its presence in fairy tales and literature connects us to shared human experiences and emotions. Symbolism of love. As a rose, briar rose is also associated with love, both romantic and passionate. So yeah, it's that higher, really it would represent that higher consciousness love. It's not just a purely carnal love, but it transcends, and it's able to bring gnosis with it too, right? You can transform that energy into a pretty illuminating force, if it's done correctly. The thorns, however, add a layer of complexity, suggesting that love can also be painful and challenging. Allegorical interpretation. The Briar Rose story has been used as an allegory for various themes, including identity, the impact of war, and the power of stories. Okay, I think I've read enough on that. Okay, yep. Let's go back to the notes. There's a lot of animals that show up in the forest. There's probably symbolism regarding, in regard to all of them, but the owl really was the one that stood out to me the most. He's kind of one of the more main animals that plays a role in that part. And we all know there's a lot of symbolism associated with the owl. I'm not even going to get into that right now. I could probably do a whole video in and of itself on, owl symbolism. Getting into Moloch and, some pretty interesting stuff. She is a lot like Eve, Briar Rose at this point. She's wandering through the forest, and it is very reminiscent of like Eve in the garden, kind of wandering innocently. She doesn't really know, she hasn't quote unquote really eaten the fruit yet. So she's just wandering through the garden and singing. She is a lot like Eve wandering through the forest, singing of having love returned. Her singing acts as kind of this call, she's manifesting, this prince through her subconscious mind. She's had dreams of a prince. They say if you dream a thing more than once, it's sure to come true, she says. This is her having intuitive awareness and her subconscious, unconscious speaking directly to her. There's a lot of power in dreams and dream work. So if you can learn to lucid dream, which I have not learned this technique yet. It's something I've wanted to know how to do for a long time, but you can do a lot of shadow work, when it comes to this. And Curtis Joseph, he actually has a really good, it's one of his older videos, I think at this point, video on shadow work and stuff. And he talks about it in there. The animals in nature are acting as messengers. They always do. Nature can appoint these sorts of things. So like when we work kind of in flow with natural law, when we're kind of working with the flow of the river, rather than trying to resist it, it can help manifest, magical types of things. His cloak reminds me of an outfit from an Illuminati book. So the prince actually does have his coat that he wears, or like his kind of cape and his hat. It did really remind me of an outfit from, let me see if I can find that really quick. It shouldn't be too hard to find because there's really not too many pictures in this book. Yeah, it almost reminds me of this. With the hat, doesn't have I don't think it has a cross on it or anything like that. But what is this outfit? I'm trying to remember. So in the Illuminati book, The Secret School of Wisdom, it's called the Lesser Regent Degree, Princeps. Above that one, hold on. A table stands to the left, draped in red, on which the regent's garments have been placed. These are as follows. Above the coat, a type of... I've always wondered how to say this word. Cuirass? Not sure. Cuirass. That's something I'm gonna have to look up. Is actually, you know what? Let's do it right now. I think it's cuirass. Could be wrong. Oh, crass? Cuirass. That's how you say it. Cuirass. Interesting. Above the coat, a type of cuirass or breastplate is worn, made only of white leather with a red cross on it like this. And then it says above that one wears a white long-sleeved open cloak with a red cross sewn onto the left breast. The sleeves have small red cuffs. The cloak is fashioned like an open shirt with a red collar in this fashion. The regents wear a tall white round hat with a red feather plume as in this drawing. On their feet they wear red laced half boots. As a distinctive sign, only the cross on the provincial superior's breastplate has golden rays emanating from it, as can be seen in this drawing. So, interesting. So yeah, that's a really interesting book if you ever want to read the Illuminati degrees. They sell it on Amazon. Anyway, getting back to Sleeping Beauty notes. So that's Philip's clothes that he wears, particularly the ones he's wearing in the woods that day. He refers to Aurora as a mysterious being. When he heard her voice, he's like, is this a wood sprite? He says to the horse, so it has unhuman beauty. So there's this whole idea that kind of fantasy already kind of permeates the culture in this movie, or like supernatural type beings. The prince is like awfully grabby at first when he like first meets her. I thought that was like kind of like off-putting. I was like, stop being so grabby, man. Stop being so grabby. Invites her to the cottage. Oh, wait. She invites him to come to the cottage in the glen that evening. The Fae end up using magic for the first time in 16 years. They let their guard up for one day. Is it 16 years? Yeah, for about 16 years. Pretty much. Lost my spot. They let their guard up for one day. It's like the last day. They weren't careful enough, and the raven ends up seeing them. Its name is Diablo. There's symbolism in that, obviously. The upset of not being able to see the prince, because they say she has to go, the Fae tell her she has to go and be this princess. She thinks she's not going to see the prince again, even though they met up in the forest and everything. But that's like kind of the first real catalyst she has since living out in the woods. Like that really makes her upset, makes her go through a whole trial and everything. The King Stefan, I don't know if there's any symbolism in his name, King Stefan, but he looks like just like Solomon in one of the scenes. He's kind of standing like on his balcony on the porch out there. And it even has like the whole checkerboard floor thing going on. So we see that, in a lot of temples and stuff, representing duality. I did a whole video on that. Yeah, his name is Stefan, so Stefan. Lee is the name of the queen, Leah. And she's actually a biblical matriarch. And there's a sunset in the background. I don't know if there's any symbolic significance in that. Well, I guess because they were waiting until sunset, they said that the princess was supposed to prick her finger that night, so he's kind of been watching for her this whole time, and is disappointed that she's not there yet. There's a double-headed eagle in the king's room too, where they kind of feast and stuff, and this double-headed eagle, we've talked about this before. We see this on a lot of medieval crests. We see it in Scottish Rite Freemasonry. The double-headed eagle could also be representative of Thaumael too, in a lot of ways. We see the double-headed god. royal woodcutters. The king refers to the royal woodcutters, and woodcarvers guild are mentioned. So it must be his builders, his masons, you know. So yeah, they kind of throw a little bit of that type of stuff in there, but you have to really know what you're looking for, or otherwise you would never notice it, you know. They make a joke. He says, "You're living in the past. This is the 14th century." It's really funny. If you've seen the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. One last gift is the symbol of thy royalty. So the Fae, they give one final gift to the princess, Aurora. Their final gift is a symbol of thy royalty, a crown to wear in grace and beauty, as is thy right and royal duty. So it's kind of got this like little poetic, like, you know, thing they say before they, you know, give her the crown, present her with the crown. Maleficent manifests in the fireplace. She's really kind of creepy in this, you know, creepier in that part than she is in any other part of the movie. She always uses green lights. Like her staff has a green orb on it. All her spells are green. So I'm not sure why, like why the color green. Maybe just to kind of represent like poisonous or toxic type energy. Not sure. But it is cool. Aurora ends up becoming possessed. She basically just like takes over her mind. Maleficent takes over her mind and is able to make her get up and just walk. They say it's not for us to decide, you know, while they're waiting outside in the other room because they didn't know all this was going on. It's not for us to decide about whether she has to marry the prince or not. So they're always, the Fae just kind of are performing this duty, you know, they kind of just have to follow orders. There's a secret passage in the fireplace. It reminds me a lot of Zelda. Which Zelda game is that? It's the third one. Why am I not thinking? I can't think of Zelda's 2, Link's Awakening. What is the third one? It's not A Link Between Worlds. That's not the name of the original. Hold on. A Link to the Past. That's what I was thinking of. There's like, I think there's a secret fireplace in that game, if I'm not mistaken, and also Paper Mario. So yeah, secret fireplaces, that seems to be like a common theme with like princesses and stuff for some reason. I don't know why. And Dark Souls as well. Secret passages and the fireplaces. The secret passage acts like a portal and it closes behind her. The Fae are unable to open it back up at first. Rose is also wearing blue and gold at this part. Her dress is blue. These are colors that are commonly seen in mystery school degrees. Like if you've ever read any of Manly P. Hall's stuff, I think he talks about it a little bit in some of the Egyptian stuff. So, oh yeah, and when Maleficent disappears, she does like this spell and she'll vanish from the room. It looks like a sigil if you pause like the video, and I think that's what the picture of this video will be. It will be a picture of that shape that Maleficent leaves when she vanishes from the room. The sun has set and everyone is waiting for the princess in the kingdom. She's asleep up in the tower, but nobody really knows that yet. You can see the checkerboard floor theme going on up there as well. The fairies shrink and put everyone to sleep until she awakens. So the Fae, they shrink themselves and they go down and put everyone to sleep in the town. A lot of these old songs, I wrote a note, it's hard to tell what they're saying. Like in a lot of these older Disney movies, it's just a bunch of high sounding like, oh, but you can't ever really tell what they're saying. One of the eagles on a banner looks like a phoenix, so you see some phoenix symbolism going on here. There's 2 green candles that the Fae put out before they go to the cottage. I don't know if those 2 green candles have any significance or not, because they're kind of putting out candles the whole time they're in that castle, putting everyone to sleep. There's symbolism on the fist shaking before the prince, his name is Philip, I think. before he enters the cottage, and then he ends up getting trapped by Maleficent. Why does Philip shake his fists before entering? I was looking this up the other day. I should probably put Sleeping Beauty. That would really help. He shakes his fist before entering the cottage to break the curse because he is about to confront the evil Maleficent's curse and challenge her power. But that was kind of before he even knew that she was in there or anything. He's not just entering a building, but a place where a powerful spell is holding Aurora captive and is about to fight the darkness within. So you may see him, he does this weird, when he's going into the, he does like this weird like fist shaking thing he does it to his horse before he enters the cottage because Briar Rose invited him there that night. And so I'm not sure what the symbolism of that is, but it says he shakes his fist somewhere else. By shaking his fists, preparing to fight Maleficent's spell and the evil that she has cast upon Aurora, the darkness within. A visual representation of his determination and courage to break the curse. The action emphasizes his defiance of Maleficent and his commitment to saving Aurora. So Maleficent is at a, quote, forbidden mountain. The creatures are dancing there around a green flame. I don't know if they're doing some kind of ceremony or ritual or what's going on at that point. I was going to look up if Prince Philip is like a real... sounds like a real character. Or it's a... Okay, I'm thinking of Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. Longest-lived male member of the British royal family. And I think, isn't he, is he the Grand Master? Yeah, Prince Philip was a Freemason, specifically a member of the United Grand Lodge of England. He was initiated into Freemasonry in December 1952 and became a member until his passing. While he was a member, he held the position of Grand Master of the United Grand Lodge of England. So yeah, very interesting. I wonder if that Sleeping Beauty character is like based on him at all. I don't know. Walt Disney was a 33rd degree Mason. He had something called the 33 Club. A lot of interesting, weird stuff you can look up with Disney. You know, even when it gets to the comes to the CIA and stuff. I think a lot of it's like public. There's public documents and stuff you can just like look up now on the internet. So it's pretty much free knowledge at this point. He died in 2021. He was 99 years old. Wow. Interesting. Okay. So it wasn't that long ago. All right. So that was, I'm glad I looked that up. Very interesting. Was there an older Prince Philip, maybe? From like medieval times? Philip IV of France. Philip the Fair. Maybe it has more to do with him. I don't know. But either way. Okay. So Maleficent's able to kind of show the princess in like a vision type thing. She's able to conjure that up and show it to him. In ageless sleep, she finds repose. So she stays the same age, and Maleficent basically mocks the prince. She's like, I'm going to keep you here and make you wait for 100 years, make you, be very old, before you're able to go and basically save the princess. And then by the time I let you go and do that, you'll just be really old. She'll be young. and beautiful, you know, which is kind of weird because we did just look up Prince Philip, and he was how old? Was he 99? Is that what we said? Yeah. So basically like 100 years. That's kind of a weird synchronicity or coincidence, however you want to look at it. So she just like, yeah, she really messes with his mind. She wants to bring him a lot of pain. Just to mess with his head, basically. She says she'll sleep well for the first time in 16 years. And I wrote, I wonder what the underlying component to Maleficent's pain is, and that's what I'm hoping to find out through watching the Maleficent movie. Perhaps this is explained in the other movies. The fairies are kind of hiding out in a, quote, arch in this specific spot, which is kind of interesting in connection with like the Royal Arch, things of that nature. I do know that in the newer movies, the horse also goes underneath the rainbow, under the arch. So there's like rainbow symbolism and arch symbolism in one spot, as the prince is going, I believe, to go and fight the Maleficent as the dragon. I think he's on his way to go and do that. He has to go through a bunch of thorns and stuff. We already talked about like the thorn symbolism. The prince is given the shield of, we see this a lot with like ceremonies and stuff, knightly ceremonies, a shield of virtue and the mighty sword of truth. So the shield of virtue and the sword of truth, the mighty sword of truth. Weapons of righteousness will triumph over evil, the Fae say. So they grant them to the prince. His horse goes underneath the rainbow. I read that. The raven gets turned to stone by Merryweather. Maleficent climbs her tower, and she basically starts casting these crazy spells everywhere. And the actual definition of Maleficent is causing harm or destruction, especially by supernatural means. So I thought that was like cool that that's like the literal definition of Maleficent. So that whole storm goddess or deity type idea we were talking about before. Yeah, I was gonna look up the name of the home of the Fae in the newer movies is the Moors. I think that's what they called it. Yeah, the Moors, Moors, Moorlands, and I believe that even has some connection with the Templars to some degree. I feel like Grandmaster Timothy Hogan, I think he's talked about that before, I want to say, but I could be mistaken. Okay. In Sleeping Beauty, Maleficent casts a spell on King Stephen's castle by saying, "A forest of thorns shall be his tomb, borne through the skies on a fog of doom. Now go with the curse and serve me well. Around Stephen's castle cast my spell." She then says, "Now shall you deal with me, O prince, and all the powers of hell. Me, the mistress of all evil." It looks very like Cleopathic at this point. So definitely like that type of archetypal energy going on. She flies across the sky right in front of the castle to face him. So she literally, I think she goes all the way from like her tower. Like she just flies across the whole map and then like lands right in front of the castle and then takes him on and transforms into a dragon. It shoots green flames. It has a black body with a purple underbelly, so I don't know if there's any like color symbolism going on with the dragon. The sword of truth, kind of this little like consecration of the fairy that I think it's the red fairy. What's the red fairy's name? I get their names mixed up all the time. There's Merryweather, Flora and Fauna. Flora is the red one. Okay. I think it's Flora that does this little spell on the sword. Sword of truth. Fly swift and sure, that evil die and good endure. So there's a lot of like these little kind of ceremonial or ritualistic like kind of spells or like incantations that are kind of said throughout this whole movie, which are pretty interesting. The prince, once the sword's charged up, he then throws it right into the chest area on the dragon. Looks like it's the heart. Hits the dragon falls down. There was something I wanted to, if I can find it, read on the symbolism of the dragon when it comes to... Yeah, here we go. This is from Asnoth Mason's Draconian Ritual book. There are many more interpretations of the dragon as a symbol, and there are several reoccurring motifs that need to be mentioned while discussing the Draconian tradition. One of them is the motif of a treasure that is guarded by dragons, gemstones, gold, and great riches hidden in caves and dragon lairs. This shows that there is something valuable to be found within the Draconian Gnosis, a reward that awaits those who are not afraid to confront the dragon. Another story is about defeating a dragon, usually a monster that poses a threat to some kind of order or state of affairs. Apart from fairy tales presenting knights fighting with dragons to receive a treasure or marry a princess, we encounter similar stories in the oldest myths and legends across the world. Marduk slays Tiamat, Zeus defeats Typhon, Ra fights with Apophis, Hadad kills Lotan, I'm sorry if I'm butchering those names, and so on. The defeat of the dragon signifies the triumph of a new force over primordial chaos and foundation of a new world order. In psychological terms, it also represents repression of primeval instincts, recognized as dark, evil, and unwanted, and pushing them into the deep into the unconscious. So we see that with that whole idea of too much light. You know, there's this whole repression of like some of the darker primeval stuff, and if that's repressed for too long, it ends up coming back and kind of having almost this backward swing, because there's certain energies you just can't stop like forever. So, natural evolution is going to have to take its place at some point. I thought those were very interesting insights, in conjunction or like in congruency with a lot of the stuff I talked about in this video. Once again, I mentioned the kiss that wakes up the princess is much like the Kundalini, rising through the body and bringing illumination to the third eye type area. Love, genuine love can totally transform someone's life. It can bring them from a place of woe and misery and pain, and just totally transform and bring health and vitality back to your body. It's a very awesome thing to experience. These two, Prince Philip and Aurora, they both go through powerful transformation and initiation in this, entire movie. Him having to go through the trials of fighting Maleficent, and her going through this slumber and kind of death and rebirth type thing herself too. I guess they don't really show the actual wedding at the end. I don't think the wedding commences, but this could be, have references to the alchemical wedding, I suppose, but they are just dancing at the end with the dress changing colors, because the fairies are fighting over which color the dress should be, as always. So yeah, just the dance. Then they dance in the clouds. So that had like a lot of Paradiso type vibes. Made me think of Dante and Beatrice as they're ascending through the celestial spheres in Dante's Divine Comedy, the third part, Paradiso. All right, everyone. I am going to go ahead and end the video here. I hope you get some kind of value out of this video. If you like these kind of movie breakdowns, let me know, and I'll definitely try and do more, because I enjoy doing it. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, everyone. Until next time, I hope you all have an amazing day or night wherever you are, and you should see me pretty soon. So peace and blessings. Take care, all.